Well, hey there. Welcome to another episode of Bill Selak Talks. My name is Bill Selak. This is me talking. So I might be late to the game, but watching and listening to music on YouTube is kind of a cool thing. Have you done this before? Not so much for I want to hear a song. For that, I'll just, go to my music app and listen to my songs. But for listening to live performances, the YouTubes, as my mom calls them, is a pretty sweet place to listen to some music. So I've been actually really digging the new Blink-182 album lately. Also, as a side note, I have decided that whatever music you loved from ages probably 15 to 20 is the music you'll likely listen to the rest of your life. By the time I got to be 23, I'm like, what other music should I listen to? And tried other stuff, and just there's been other cool stuff, but for the most part it's been punk rock music, and I'm figuring that it's going to stay punk rock music my entire life. So with that said, the new Blink album is good stuff, and I'm wondering is this what's their setup? How do they do live stuff? For the reason I got into this, and this part's actually vaguely interesting. I think it is interesting. See, I'm going to undersell it, and you'll be like, that was a good story. For the Walkathon, our school's big fundraiser, we have a student band and then an employee band. And so I play bass in the employee band, play 7 songs or so. And one of them was off the new Paramore album, which is phenomenal. I've never been into Paramore until this album, and my goodness, are they extraordinary musicians in every way. We played the song You First, and that's a surprisingly complex song to play for all the instruments. It was not easy for us to learn. There's nothing that I did, practice for hours and hours, but it is not a simple chord progression. There's a bunch to it. And so I watched a few live performances from Paramore to see if they did anything differently, or to try and kind of hear the bass line and pick that apart. And then realized they're a trio. So I'm like, what's up with that? Singer, guitar, and drums. But they need more than a singer, guitar, and drummer. Singer, guitarist, and drummer to play live. And it turns out they have they get a bass player, they get a second guitarist, and then they get a percussionist, and then also someone that plays guitar and synth, and probably plays the triggers the backing tracks and the click track and whatever. They have 7 people on stage, which is wild. And so I'm I wonder what Blink does. Are they doing the same thing when they have 7 people on stage? And turns out they're just a trio, and there's one guitar playing. I don't know that they have any backing anything. A lot of bands will have 3 extra vocals, 2 to 5 extra guitar tracks to get a really big sound. And aside from a couple really obvious kind of samples, it seems like they just play as a trio, which is kind of cool. I think they're playing pretty big shows these days, and so to see them as just them. And then I saw the comments, and I guess even on YouTube, comments are where the soul goes to slowly die. Someone was like, "Man, Tom's a good guitar player. I'm glad he's back in the band. He can really play some music." And so he's not always been good. The band was terrible in the early 90s, but they wrote good songs. They wrote catchy songs. But for a long time, Tom's been really good. I love his side project, Angels and Airwaves. He's done some really, really cool stuff with guitars on that album. And so I'm just what is going on? He is a good guitarist. He left the band, played in Angels and Airwaves, came back. There's a great story with that, but doesn't matter. And so it's just he's always been great. He didn't have to get great to rejoin the band or to go on this tour that looked to be pretty big shows. And so it's not so much about people that are good musicians might not get the spotlight. It's actually more about here's the direction we're heading with this. It's actually a difference between small record labels and major record labels. And so when you're on a smaller record label, typically the musicians are playing at a level where they can record their instruments, whatever it may be, or their voices, and by the time you're done recording, it sounds professional. like as close to perfect. We'll round it up to perfect. They can get a recording that sounds perfect. Technically, it's not, and that's the super subjective thing, but it's perfect, all right? Because that's not the point of this episode. And so I remember being in the studio, professional studio, Orange Whip studio, phenomenal recording studio, and would like play the bass or play the guitar, and would go back and be like, oh, let's listen back. Hang on. All right, let's go back and fix that section. And then we'd rewind to like halfway through verse 1, play through it again. Let's listen. All right, great. Let's go back. Halfway through the chorus, let's clean that part up. That part's a little bit off. And it's called punching in. You just go in and fix every little thing. And for the bands on kind of the smaller labels or unsigned bands, you'd be able to knock out quicker than a song a day, maybe a song an hour if you're playing bass, to get it like close to perfect. And so you'd build the whole album that way, doing a bunch of takes, putting takes together, punching in and out to get like the solid, perfect sound, kind of without big errors. Vocals are always going to be different, so let's just kind of skip beyond that. Like people spend a lot of time working on like every syllable for vocals. But with a major record label, if you're playing at that level where you're signed to a major label, the amount of takes you need, like you can count on one hand. You tend to be able to play as close to perfect as humans can. And I've got to be in the room as professional musicians have recorded, and it's kind of mind-boggling. Like it blows the mind how good they are and how flawless they can play. And I don't use that term lightly, because calling music perfect, like I have a lot of issues with that. This is like as close to perfect as humans can get. And so, the kind of indie labels, they eventually get to perfect. The major labels like take one, pretty much perfect. And so what that actually enables you to do is really interesting. What you get to do when you're playing at that level of being on a major label is the amount of takes you need to get it just right is one, essentially. And so what you're able to do is you can focus on the bigger picture. You can focus on like the arrangement, like when do I play the bass instead of just let me play it, right? You get to kind of move beyond kind of the granular details and think like really big picture. What instrumentation do we want? Do we actually not want a bass on this? It's more about like that higher level kind of creativity or like production than capturing a good take and capturing that perfect performance. And so here's where we're going with this. With generative AI that creates music, so many people are like, this is awful, this is terrible, this will replace real musicians. And I want to not focus on that. I want to actually talk about, with all of this as a premise, what you get to do currently in mid-2024 with AI generated music is you type a prompt, it knocks out a song in like 20 seconds, which in different ways is equally mind-blowing as being in a room with someone that you can hit record on a computer, they play, and it's perfect. It's just like, how did this happen? Like, this did not exist, and now this exists. But what happens when you don't have to worry about the musicianship, the like, let me play guitar and spend 1 hour to get a song just right, or spend like 8 hours to get the song just right. When you don't have to worry about actually getting a good take and putting together a good recording, what you actually get to focus on is the creativity. I'm going to say that one more time because this is amazing. What you actually get to focus on when you're not worrying about all the little things of getting the recording just right is you get to focus on the creativity. And what this actually allows you to do as a teacher, we're going to talk explicitly now about the education space. As an educator, what this allows you to do is democratize music production. And that is super cool, because now it's not just every kindergartner, every 8th grader, every 12th grader can have an iPad with GarageBand and write their own music, right? That still has been a decent hurdle to jump through. Like, you give me a room full of kindergartners and iPads, and they will record some music. And with like a really scaffolded way of teaching them, I'd get some pretty cool songs out of them. But in a lot of ways, it's going to sound like a kindergartner wrote it, or kind of at best like a 5th grader wrote it. You wouldn't listen to that song and be like, whoa, that's really cool. Is that the new single from... There's a complexity to building music, even in GarageBand, that has all of the pre-recorded loops, that it takes a bit of time to actually like produce that music, and a bit of either scaffolding or expertise to be able to do music production. Totally doable. I think by the time you get to 6th grade, like digital music is an elective, totally doable. But what you get with generative AI music is the democratization of music production. You just have to have an idea. And now, even as we're moving away from text to generative AI music and going from voice to generative AI music, which is going to happen, I'd guess, kind of any day right now, what's going to happen with that is that you can basically just like open up an app, tap the microphone button, describe the type of music you want, and then within 30 seconds, you're going to get a full song. Now, the way it exists right now, as far as I know, is once you have the song created, it's done. So the last episode, I dove more into kind of the mechanics of that. But it's like, give me a thing, it gives you a thing. You can't be like, let's change verse 2. Let's change the lyrics in the chorus. Let's change the chord progression. It's just like, you get what you get and you don't get upset. At some point, that is likely going to be changing. And so what ends up happening is if we want a song, we can actually go straight to music production. We don't have to spend time either as a whole class or individual students developing their own workflow, building out their own pieces of music. And we can actually have a really high-level conversation about like the vision of the music, if it's for learning and reviewing and remembering like R-controlled valves in 1st grade, if it's writing a soundtrack for a movie that you made in a 5th grade movie making class, whatever it is, like you can talk really big picture about like what style do we want, what kind of emotions do we want the audience to feel if this is something for a soundtrack. Like there's all these like really high level things, so we can actually prioritize the creative vision where it's less about the mechanics of the thing and more about the big picture. What are we trying to do with this music? And so I think what's actually exciting about this is that this is going to lead to boundary pushing in the industry. And I think this is actually going to allow students pretty quickly to work at a professional level of audio engineering from the start. It's going to lead students to engage with these really high-level creative concepts and allow them to focus on that big picture thinking without getting bogged down into the details of like, how do I get my guitar into the device and change input 1? And it's clipping. What does clipping mean? I'm not great at playing guitar. It skips all of that and keeps the conversations and the student creation at a very high level. And I don't think we can bet on just how quickly this is accelerating. And what I'm encouraging you to do through listening to this is to really lean into the idea of democratizing access to these professional grade tools. And I think that's it, right? There's a whole lot that we need to sort out about like, does this feel like our songs? What are the ethics of where this music comes from? How do we cite or license or credit? Like, that's a whole lot of stuff. And that could be like a whole season of podcasts. But I think I want to just end on the idea that going from idea and text prompt to music democratizes music creation for all of our students. And that is a deeply, deeply exciting thing that we as educators need to jump into, to lean in on, and to figure out how this actually can help us make classrooms more student-centered, to where students can be even more creative, like in its truest form, creative, right? Create. Let them create. And so what does this actually look like for you? So I think the first step is whole class, open up Suno, suno.com. Be like, all right, what did we just learn today? Have it be kind of whole class exit ticket for the lesson, for the day. Get them to describe it, come up with a genre together. Maybe they just raise their hands to vote. Who wants a punk rock song? Raise your hand. All right, enough hands went up. Punk rock song about R-controlled vowels. What's that reminder that like students never do around this time of year, end of May, like they're not charging their devices? Give me a disco song reminding students to charge their devices every night before they go to bed so that they come to school fully charged. Send that. Ooh, you get a catchy song there. Students might be going to bed being like, charge my device, gotta charge it up. This is why I don't write melodies and sing professionally, by the way. But with that, they're like, wait, I need to actually charge my device. And they charge their device. Like, problem solved. Maybe. Probably not if we're talking about middle school students, but that's okay. Yeah, but I think we play with it in that space, whole class. And then as there are specific projects where students need a soundtrack for, where they want to make their own kind of study guide, I want to learn about parts of a cell. They can write their own song using something like Suno to help them learn parts of a cell because it's in a song. I know that whenever stuff was in a song, I always tend to remember it much, much better than just having to memorize kind of random facts. So maybe that's an opportunity for students for kind of independent kind of study tips, which is something you never could have done before. You want to study for 8th grade science test? Cool, write yourself a song about parts of a cell. Like that feels like a very indirect way to learn a thing. But right now, in 20 seconds, in less than the amount of time that it took me to describe the thing, we would have the song. And that's really exciting. And I think we're just beginning to like be at the very, very beginning of what's possible with just generative AI music. So try stuff out. Let me know what you like, what works, what doesn't. And I encourage you to continue to look at this as all kinds of new possibilities. And then as you're going through lessons, particularly since it's the end of the year, these are great times to be taking risks and try things that there tends to be less pressure on the last half of May. Because it's the end of the school year. This is that time of year when a lot of people are like, we'll just put on a movie and have a popsicle party and have the kids play outside more, which are actually things we could just be doing in life more of. But just kind of that less kind of pressure, the last go, got to cover all the content. Somehow the back half of May feels like there's just a bunch of events and it's okay to put on a movie or go outside longer in a way that it doesn't feel like that. So instead of like, let's put on a movie, how about let's write a song together? All we have to do is give it a prompt and a genre, and we've got a song. What's one thing you remember from 3rd grade this year? Let's make that a song. Let's try this style. Let's try that style. What's one thing you learned? Great. Let's make another song. So many options. And wow, it's exciting. So check it out. Try it. If you have other ideas for this, I would love to hear them. I'll share my thoughts. You share your thoughts back with me, and then all our thoughts and all our ideas get better. So go make some music. Totally possible, even if you're not a professional musician. And let me know what you're doing. Thanks for listening. My name is Bill Selak. This has been me talking.